Okay. It is October 19th. It's 4 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can I get a roll call of Planning Commission members present, please? Any order?
Erin Palin's here.
Abby Dahlman's here.
Lupe Bobadias here.
Steve Boyle here.
All right. We have county commissioners.
Marcella here.
Anyone else? Okay. Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda? I don't think so. We have minutes that we tabled prior that were for dated August 24th, are the ones that I found were dated August 24th that we need a motion to approve. If everybody's had a chance to look at them. I think they were sent out before our last meeting.
I vote to approve. No problems.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Who seconded?
Yeah, who seconded that?
Bryce was the second.
And who made the motion?
Boyle?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the conversation about the backcountry zone district, code amendment preparation. To give a little background, Anne and Paul and I met to talk a little bit about some of these things that we needed to talk to Aaron Smith, our land use attorney, on. If you recall our last meeting, we kind of were talking about what we're allowed to do, not allowed to do with this zone district. One question being, why is it a zone district versus an overlay? Another being whether we could allow for less than standard building code structures to be within this zone district. Things like that. We did hear back from Aaron today. It was a pretty good discussion that we had. I think we've all taken away from Aaron's feedback to us today that we definitely have to do the zone district, especially if we're trying to allow a different type or standard to build structures to. So moving forward with the zone district as we have, I think is still our only option. The other question about the building standards, I think it just comes down to some formalities as far as what we want to call it. Backcountry structure, and maybe Anne and Paul can chime in on that, like as far as it being more of a habitable space rather than a dwelling unit.
Country cabin sounds good to me.
Yeah. In the discussion, in having these discussions, you know, we've kind of been looking at this document that we had started on and realizing that, you know, in the last meeting, especially for those of you new to the board, we spent a lot of time just kind of talking at you and trying to catch you up on what we had learned in the past or what we had gone through in the past. I think that if everybody's, you know, on board, what we'd like to do is redraft this document to be more of what we have been talking about instead of, I feel like it's still a draft from before several meetings. And so making it make a little bit more sense by redrafting it into a document of what it is that we think we want to propose now, that will be easier for the planning commission to go through and edit. Because right now I think there was a lot of questions and some of them had already been vetted, but not then redrafted into this document. So the thought is that we could do that. One big piece to this that I would like to redraft is the intent statement. And maybe to be a little bit more helpful, I'll pull up our draft document here. Yep. Sorry, just one second. Let's see. There it is. So if you recall, this was the document that we were working on or working from at our last meeting. And kind of, we've already vetted out that we probably don't want Public Works Department dealing with our existing roads and driveways, for instance. And we've already made some notes to things about changing how access works and winter plowing. So we want to just clean this document up for you. And I apologize that we had not had time to do that prior to today. That was our hope. But I think hearing back from Aaron today kind of gives us the next push to go through and make this document a little bit more concise. One piece that I feel like is difficult is this purpose and intent statement here. There's just a lot. This is a really big intent statement. So I pulled a couple of, as many of you know, but maybe not everybody, our neighboring communities have something similar or to this effect currently in place in their communities. So Chaffey County has a backcountry, Summit County has a backcountry zone district. Eagle County's is a backcountry, but I think there's just like a special use permit or something that you do. So there are several surrounding us that we didn't really just like reinvent the wheel with this. We did pull from them. What I think we did is we maybe pulled from all of them for this purpose and intent statement, and we didn't really get it all dwindled down to one for us. The couple of counties that I think did a good job of explaining what we are trying to do are sorry, when it shared to you, but it didn't show up on my screen. So I'll let you guys, like, can everybody read this okay?
Pretty hard.
Okay, let me see how I can make it a full
I
screen.
think it looks like, Heather, if it's in the bottom right of your view, it's at 77%, it looks like.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Ooh. Oh, geez. How is that for people?
That works.
Okay.
Much better. Heather, is it that you like this one better than the one we've got?
No. I just wanted to, there's pieces of these. I just wanted us to be able to discuss them a little bit. I think ours is too wordy. This intent A statement is much more concise, I feel like. So I do like that about it. The other thing I like about it is that it adds in this piece at the end that, you got to recognize that you're restricted on your access and you're restricted on emergency services and those kinds of things. I even like this last sentence of people interested in owning land with ready access. They need to seek out more developed parcels, not something within this zone district. So I like that it kind of encompassed all of those. There is the Summit County purpose I actually liked better, and that one's here in that our goal, I think, is really to keep things relatively undeveloped and fall within that character. So I would just love people's feedback on what their thoughts are on those different intents, if there's anything we need to make sure we're including or not. So it was more of just a discussion on these.
And do these both allow for building cabins? Do both of these regulations allow for kind of the same thing that we're considering?
Yep, like the yurt type or the lesser builds.
Yeah. I guess that would be my only feedback. I kind of wish it would, at least in the intent, spell that out maybe a little more clearly. But I like that the uses were listed in Chafee, just talking about, fishing, hunting. But I think that the fact that this one refers to them being also sensitive environmental areas, I think is something that we would want to borrow as well, just given the characteristics of a lot of the land that we have.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess I do too. I remember writing that intent statement for us. And I did. I cribbed from Chaffee County. I cribbed from Summit County. And I think I didn't crib very much from Eagle, if I did at all, because I'm not sure they've got the same kind of thing here. But I remember writing all of those statements and thinking, boy, I like all of them. But, sometimes they say the same thing and we don't need the whole thing there. So Aaron, Heather, you're going to take a stab at reproducing the intent statement so that it's a little bit more efficient?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I just wanted to make sure that I was including what others wanted to make sure was included. And I guess with that being said, everybody's kind of had a chance to digest this whole thing over the last couple of weeks. And if there's anything people have more questions on or input on, I think that all would help in creating that statement.
Okay.
There's also this section here was additional underneath Chaffee counties that helps as well to kind of that I picked the ones that seemed applicable to our area as well, under development kind of standards. So yeah, pieces that people like or dislike or feel strongly one way or the other about, I just, would like to try to include that. And then of course, once I create an intent statement, we create a draft document, then go forward with everybody and say, okay, now everybody pick it apart some more. But at least giving me a direction that yes, we agree that this is the direction we're going, is helpful.
Looks like they took some out. Because we've got.
Well, I did. There was some in here that weren't applicable to Lake County. So I just copied the ones that I just did a copy and paste on here.
I like all of those.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like this section too, the ones that you highlighted.
Yeah, I agree. It gets, I like the specificity.
Yeah.
So would this be part of the intent statement, or would it be in the section on its own section, like, like in a section that, or these could actually be their own sections.
Yeah, I think that, there were a couple of sentences in here, such as, use densities and standards for the zone district are intended to preserve existing rural character. Like, I liked that wording a lot. So whether we had a separate development section or maybe that sentence gets used in the intent statement. I think it was just the idea of pieces of this that could get mixed into an intent statement. And then I did copy these development kind of standard section from Chaffey County to say, do we want something like this, and how I feel like you could also get really in the weeds with creating development standards, right? So I don't want us to necessarily go down a rabbit hole with it, but but I also, this makes sense to have some of this stuff really, and we do already have it started in our other, document.
Well, I like all of these. I think some of these statements could probably go into other sections of our proposed code. But I think they're important enough that if they aren't somewhere else in our document, they should be in the intent statement.
Did anybody have any other thoughts or questions or things that came to mind after our last meeting that we should or could talk about?
I wanted to know if we've written anything down or come up with any potential plans for that vacant land rental regulation. I know we talked about banning it completely in the backcountry zone, but I know we'd also talked about addressing it for other areas.
Right. So yes, we have a short-term rental regulation in place. So we could reference it there in that section of our code. I think in here it would also be referenced that there would be no short-term rentals allowed in the backcountry zoning district, and that any commercial use would have to get a conditional use permit. So for instance, the Leadville, what is he called? Backcountry Huts, I think. He's up in the area where we're going to likely rezone to backcountry zoning, but he has a conditional use permit so that we're able to determine that he has a higher degree of requirements being met for safety, for fire mitigation, for, things like that when you're having people come up to a hut basis. So I think that we have notes in our document when we're doing this revision to make sure that it's noted that no short-term rentals are allowed and that any commercial use would have to be a conditional use permit.
I think, Bryce, you were also referencing leasing out vacant land as camping.
Yeah, and just addressing that along with our short-term regulations.
I don't know, Ann, Heather, what do you think about that? Because that is kind of a short-term rental. It's commercial use.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I think that maybe that's where we define in our code short-term rentals, maybe that definition just needs to be altered to include vacant lots being rented out as, it's just, and I'm just trying to think that through. It's just that we have a licensing process for the rest of the county. Are we thinking we want to, and this is kind of opening up a totally separate conversation, but related, because that would be altering our short-term rental code in how we want to, do we want to make people get licenses to short-term rent their land? You know, I mean, I guess like we just have to decide what that looks like. If we're going to change the definition of a short-term rental, then we have to anticipate that people can come to us and ask for a license to short-term rent their land, not in the backcountry district, but just as a regular thing.
Yeah, this is
But
all,
camping is where then I feel like it's its own regulation.
yeah.
So that's where I almost think that probably that's going to have to be another item on our list, probably, to talk about our short-term rental code and how we want to deal with vacant land.
Yeah, looking at code like this is kind of a hazard sometimes, because we always get a Bryce Ehrlich in there that asks the question
I'm
that,
sorry, I meant, yeah, should have stayed.
Well, I think it's important because it's absolutely becoming, reality that that's happening. And I think we need to figure out how we are going to handle it, because it's going to come up, and it actually already has come up. I think there's even been a few complaints about it. So I think we probably do need to address that fairly soon. My initial thought would be that specifically doesn't have to be addressed in backcountry zone, that in backcountry zone, we're referencing short-term rentals, but then in the short-term rental code, we would end up addressing it there. Does that make sense?
yes, it made sense to me. I never have a problem with addressing things like that in more than one place.
Right. Right.
And I don't think it would take more than a sentence to address it here.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not much more than a sentence to address it in our STR section of the code. So I think we should address it here.
Sure. And I think we can just, I mean, I think wherever we're noted to edit that into this code, we would just say no short-term rentals, including renting camping spots. Does that make?
Yeah. I think that's okay. I know that that's done. We haven't encountered it very much, but it has been encountered.
Right.
Is it a bad thing?
To rent out the vacant land for camping?
Yeah. In the back country, I think it probably is.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we could, I don't know that I want to go down that rabbit hole outside of backcountry tonight, just because I think we got to keep focused on backcountry, but I definitely think it's a discussion we should have and find out what our community wants that to look like. Are we okay with that? It's always baffling to me because we have so many campgrounds and public land here. I don't know why anybody would rent somebody else's land to do it on, but it's happening. So, yeah. But on the backcountry zone, did anybody have any additional comments on backcountry and anything else we should be thinking about?
You want to talk a little bit about sewage disposal?
Well, actually, first, I just kind of wanted to offer up that just kind of the fundamentals of what got us here, just to kind of keep that messaging moving forward. And as staff, what we see constantly, and you all may be very aware of, is that we kind of have three different scenarios. We have property owners that already own these areas and inquire all the time of us of wanting to do this kind of use. And then we have, Paul and I have been kind of tracking it a little bit, I think, now that, so that we kind of report out, but we probably have 5 to 7 inquiries weekly about people interested in acquiring property for this very use. So either they want to acquire it or they currently own it and they're seeking to be able to do some kind of minimal footprint in the backcountry. And then we have a third scenario that people are doing it and they're not compliant with current zoning or building code. And so we have a compliance issue, largely that Paul, or entirely that Paul deals with, of activity that's happening, and actually most of those, or some of those scenarios, would become compliant with this new zone district. So this was, and then as we looked around to the other communities to see that, this was all like existing code in all of our neighbors. And so that I think it's probably always good to kind of come back and explain, what's driving this work and why we're doing it. So just wanted to throw that in to, kind of keep that aligned with why we're putting all the time and effort into it.
So Ann, can you go through those 3 scenarios again?
So one, either they already own the property and they want to do a minimal impact footprint, or 2, they are looking to invest in Lake County or have a backcountry build and are calling us and want to do it. Or 3rd, it's already currently happening and it is a compliance situation that Paul's currently dealing with. In many cases, the assessor is sometimes good at finding these and then letting us know. And currently those scenarios are a zoning violation. So those are the 3 reasons that are kind of driving all of this work fundamentally, along with the idea that it is nice to preserve and maintain these areas to a certain standard.
So those 3 scenarios, how do we need to mention any of those 3 scenarios in our proposed code here?
I don't necessarily think so. I just think it's good to kind of circle back, since we're kind of a new, we have newer members of the group and kind of coming in when a lot of this work has been going on for quite some time. And I think it's just good to remember why we're even discussing it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that.
I got a quick, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just, the ridgeline mention just made me think of slope too. And this just may be my newness, but would a 30% slope also be something that we would try to stay away from development on? Or is that standard for you all?
I think that's a good idea to do that. Because our code already says, for conventional code, already says 20% or more will need to be engineered. And I don't think we're looking for a backcountry cabin to be engineered. So I would expect that somebody would want to, if they want to build their backcountry hut, they'd stay away from anything greater than 20%. But
I think that would kind of be self-regulating, but.
I do too, but as soon as we adopt this, I'm going to build it on a 33% slope and cause some damage. So I think, Abby, it's a good idea to put it in there.
yeah, it was just something that I know has come up in other planning instances. So thanks.
Yes, it does. Heather and Ann and I met with Jackie Littlepage as well, who is our environmental health director, who permits septic systems. And she taught us a couple of things when we met with her. Number one, if you want to put in a septic system, you actually have to have a well. And the minimum size of a septic system is for a 2-bedroom house. So if you want to do a septic system on your backcountry cabin of less than 600 feet, it has to be designed as though it has 2 bedrooms, and it needs to have a well. So,
And vice versa. If you have a well, the state requires you to have a septic system.
yes, thank you for that. It is also vice versa. So it's not likely that anybody that wants to build a backcountry cabin, which is so far we're looking at anything less than 600 square feet, doesn't necessarily have to have well and septic, but they will have to sign a document that demonstrates that they will not be living in this structure full time, that they will only be using it, what is it, Ann, 180 days out of the year? And
No more than 90 consecutive or 180 in a year.
90 3 months consecutive. Well, nonetheless, and I think that would ultimately wind up being a pit privy, which is an outhouse, or a vault, which would occasionally have to get pumped.
Yeah, and I think that she had said they would want it to be, if you could get a pump truck there or demonstrate, then you'd have to do one that's pumpable and get it pumped and then have the pump reports submitted. I think that one big takeaway from all of that conversation with Jackie was that there are options there as long as people fall within them, as far as what's currently in place. Her recommendation to us is that we simply reference that these people have to meet current Lake County Health Department regulations, and not even to really reference what those are or what the numbers are or anything, because it's just a constantly evolving situation. And really that's out of our realm anyway. We just want to make sure that what we are creating is going to, we aren't creating something that then you can't do when you're talking to public health. So currently you can do, somebody could come in and utilize the backcountry zone district as we are intending them to do. And they have several options currently with the health department to make that all work and come together. Those can evolve and those can change. And if they ever change to a point where it makes this backcountry zone district not as functional, that communication with Jackie and or whoever's in charge at the time will have to just stay open in order to make adjustments to this as well. But that was kind of my takeaway from that conversation with Jackie.
Mine too.
So I have a quick question then. Could they go through, do they go through that process in tandem with this so that they don't get into a situation where they've gone through whatever process they need to go through with the building department and then get to public health and find out that Lake County doesn't have any gray water regulations because we just haven't done those yet and don't have the capacity to do them?
It'll be the other way around. We won't accept a building permit application unless they've gone through the environmental health process.
Okay, that makes sense.
And really, I guess to like help that a little bit is this zone district rezoning these parcels would, for the most part, I mean, other than it gives them a square footage limit of they can't build over 1,200 square feet, lets them build exactly the way they could today without us passing this zone district. They'd have to go to environmental health and get a full septic system and or permit for a use of under 180 days. So all of it's currently still working this way already. It's just that now we're offering in tangent with that, we're offering the ability to build to a lesser degree or less square footage, if that makes sense. But the actual sewage disposal health department regulations are exactly the same, as far as whether we present or whether we move forward with backcountry zone district or not, if that makes sense.
Also a fairly easy way for us to deal with the issue. We don't have to deal with sewage disposal in this zoning code, at least to the degree that we had been thinking.
Yeah.
Single unit dwelling per parcel. So what is this?
Just showing that that's just a very generic way to include sewage
Yeah, that is-
regulation, but not elaborate. That's for another section of the code.
I like that. So do we want to talk a little bit about procedure to adopt this and the hearing process and the advertising process and the notification process?
Yeah, let's do.
Yeah, I would like to, we have a spreadsheet of stakeholders that we believe, but it's dated now, of who will need to be notified. We'll have to notify all the property owners in these areas. And so I've already asked Bryce, and I believe he's agreed to help update those lists. That's going to be a bit of a lift. And then depending on how many we end up with, we might literally just need help stuffing envelopes to get notices sent out to everyone. So I want to throw that out there. I don't know who might feel comfortable coming into the courthouse and meeting with staff in the conference room, but we might even have just, like an hour or two of just getting all the notices ready to be sent out. So that is something I just wanted to throw out there, that when the time comes, we might be looking, staff might be looking for just a little assistance in getting all the notices ready to be sent. But a rezone is requires a 30-day notice. As soon as I would propose, or at least open it for discussion, if once we have a draft copy, I think that it would be time to initiate the application. And once the application comes in, then staff will formulate the file, put together the draft and all of the supporting documentation, and then start preparing a notice. So a notice will need to run in the Herald Democrat for 30 days prior to the public hearing. And then we will need to send notices out. Generally, it would be probably a 15-day lead time for sending out notices, but I would suggest and look for the Planning Commission's direction, but I would suggest that we send those out 30 days at a minimum ahead of time. And usually a notice just notices the public hearing, but I think it would be great to also include like a Q&A, what the zone district is and what it's not, and some kind of informational flyer, because the other thing is that staff's going to get probably flooded with calls and inquiries once the notices are received. So I think it would be great to think ahead in maybe the Planning Commission to draft or staff to draft, or a collaboration on a fact sheet that accompanies the notice, so that hopefully, and additionally, we'll probably set up something on the website so they can go and access some information there as well. So we'd really like to this particular application probably needs to have a launch of information out to the public as soon as the application is actually originated. So maybe by the time that we have a draft copy ready, it might, don't want to do it too prematurely, but I also want to make sure that we're kind of queued up, that as soon as we have a draft copy, we've got it ready for placement on the web, and that we're providing resources to all of the affected property owners to gain access and answers as quickly as possible. So that was just a note I wanted to throw in there. And that's kind of the timing. I think once we're ready to initiate the application, because we have a good solid draft, then we need to start working on public awareness of what this means to affected property owners.
And do you know, is this going to be just an amendment to Chapter 5?
No, I think it'll also be, I think there's some things, I think there's also some things that can be done in definitions. Chapter 9, Chapter 5, definitely use specific standards. And actually probably Chapter 4, because I think we'll have to, Chapter 4, we'll have to set up the definition, the zone district there too. So Chapter 4 has the definitions of all of the zone districts. 5 will be use specific standards specific to the backcountry build, and then definitions within Chapter 9 and the use table 5.1.
Yeah.
It's pretty, so when we actually get into the logistics of adding all the draft items into the code, we're going to, I foresee Chapter 4, 5, and 9 at a minimum.
I think that's correct. So it's not going to be a single document that we attach to the code somewhere. It's going to go into at least three different chapters. Something else to be thinking about, because the document that we've all been looking at is all single document. But it's going to go into at least 3 different places. That's your job, Ann.
And I'm available anytime anybody has questions or supporting information, just like, I shout out those comparisons. If anybody has wants more information, just to kind of take a deeper dive into, where we've been and how we got to here, certainly just reach out anytime. I'm happy to provide that information.
So it may be not until after the first of the year that we actually have a hearing about this.
I do see Bryce's, when would the effective date of the notification be from the date the draft is adopted? Just wondering when I should pull ownership information. So we would notice prior to the public hearing. So we would want, from the date that I would set the public hearing, I think that's the day we're going to have to zero in on. And of course, some deed transfers might happen in between then. So we'll do our best. Code says we make a reasonable attempt. We can also certainly alert area realtors of the zone change. I think that's another great place, probably. I love Heather's idea about that. Maybe affected stakeholder groups that can help facilitate information to make sure that the public's aware. So I would think maybe getting this information to all the brokerages, real estate brokerages would be probably good too.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, not just that piece, but going back a little bit to a marketing piece, I'd like to call it. You know, I know Ann and I talked about that a little bit before, that Q&A, brief highlights on what the zone district is going to do, add change to what they have currently, I think will be super helpful in communicating and hopefully answering most questions with that document. Something that I feel like could be super, I'm happy to volunteer time to help put that together. Something that I think would be super helpful, honestly, is for those of you that are newer to the group and maybe are trying to figure this out while we're putting it in front of you. There are probably lots of questions that you have had or currently have that would be, you know, helpful for us to add to that Q&A document. Like, what were things that you had questions on, or you had a hard time understanding, or even still have questions on, so that we can make sure that we're getting kind of input from people as to what are the kind of questions and information that we need to make sure that we're clear and concise on when sending out this information to the public. So, you know, if anybody has, and maybe we could just do that through email to Ann. You know, if you guys think of any good questions or information that we want to make sure we put on that kind of FAQ document, I think that'd be awesome. Super helpful. Because there are some of us that have just been entrenched in this for years. And so it's hard to have that fresh look on. So you guys can help us with that a lot.
Yeah, see the forest through the trees.
Right, right. New eyes are great, yeah, absolutely, because we've been working on it for so long that you know, you're probably going to spur on those same kind of questions that we, you know, will be fielding from the public when we launch. So that's awesome.
So should we ask to see if the paper might be willing to do an article?
I mean, maybe not yet. I think
Not yet.
no. And maybe we'll think about that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it would just be helpful for us to, let's first get a really good draft in front of this planning commission and the commissioners, and make sure that we're answering and addressing and making any changes that folks want to make sure are in here. Then we can, I feel like that's kind of step one. And then step two will be really dialing in that FAQ document. That's kind of our marketing piece that lets people know what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we think the benefits are. And then from that, I think we can decide, do we need them to write an article, or do we need them just to put this flyer or whatever it is in there? I don't know. So, but let's get this document draft done first, so that the planning commission can feel really comfortable behind this before we get too far into spreading it out.
Yeah, I think that's our next chore, is to spread it out. So Ann and I can sort of divvy this up so that one of us does one chapter, or another one does another chapter, and then we split up a third one or something. Because there's going to be probably 3 or 4 definitions that we're going to have to be creating. And then chapter 4, the intent and purpose statement, is every bit a part of chapter 4. And then the specific uses are going to be where the meat of this is. Chapter 5 point, what is it in? 5.2 through like 36 or something like that.
Yeah, I think we're about up to there.
All right.
Yep, so I think we could schedule our next meeting to have a good draft out to everyone, and we'll try very hard to get that out ahead of time so that everyone has time to, really digest it prior to our next meeting, or at least the basics, and then Paul and I still may be driving it into the code, but the basic guiding document of what, going back and kind of giving us our checklist of things, and then we'll be implementing it into the code. So I think we could at least have a nice, much cleaner copy than the one that we have right now. And so that would be our goal prior to the next meeting, and to make sure that everybody has that document ahead of time. And then also, I think that at that meeting, we could make hopefully, we could have a goal of making a intentional commitment for starting the application and looking for a hearing date, and starting to, and I think actually getting the application, identifying all the stakeholder groups, having the information ready to put out with the FAQ, the marketing piece, having those items ready. Once we feel confident about all of that, then preparing the notices to go out.
I hope you don't want to set a deadline for that next meeting yet.
And not for, let's see, so technically our next meeting is next week. So that probably leads into a good discussion about if we feel that we have something that we'd like to meet next week about, or if we would like to go to our next regular scheduled meeting of, sorry, I'm looking at my calendar, of November 9th. November 9th, I think that, Paul, don't you think we would feel confident that we would be able to have a draft ready?
I felt confident that we'd have one ready today.
I know. I know. So.
So that's why I'm not inclined to want to set that date today.
Right. Well, I think it would be good for us to try to make a commitment to the group, since I think everybody's anxious, I think.
Yeah, well, staff needs to keep in mind, for all of you planning commissioners, that we always try, and we don't always succeed, but we always try to get a staff report to you as early as a week before. So we always try, and fail miserably often, to get a staff report to you a week before the meeting. Which means that if we were going to go next week, we'd have to be getting you a document today. That ain't gonna happen. So if we're talking about November 9th, we actually want to be able to get a document to you by what, November 2nd?
Right, that gives us 2 weeks.
Those are famous last words.
I know, I know. I know.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the best we can for November 9th. And, like I said, I'll help work on the intent statement, and then I'm happy to pass things back and forth via email too. And then we'll do what we can to, I feel like we'll figure it out.
Okay.
And if we go to November 9th and we don't have that much, and all we have is the intent statement to pick apart, then we can do that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure one more time to offer out if anybody has any questions or additional input that they want to make sure that is heard, and or anything like that, or anything else you want to talk about.
When it comes time to do the, for a lack of a better term, the marketing materials, that's kind of my wheelhouse. I am high risk for COVID, so I won't be volunteering to help stuff envelopes unless you want me to come grab some. So I'm more than happy to help with flyers or frequently asked questions or anything like that. So just keep me in mind for that part, please.
Don't worry. We,
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Heather, Amit asked me to look into updating the planning commission website page on the new website. Are you going to be updating that? Or should staff be updating that? Or he just wanted me to know or let you know that he's looking at it.
I think that's a great question. And I think that probably it'd be good with everybody to start taking a look at the page if you haven't already seen it. And then, yeah, maybe we could add that to our next meeting agenda for decision. Does that sound good? Because I think right now it's pretty up to date, but it would be, so in the past, staff has put minutes and application, pending application information. We've updated that. So as far as like those kind of items, it might continue to be a little bit easier for staff to put those on. But anyway, I think but we can always use help. That being said, we can always use help. So maybe, there could be a little bit of a discussion because we're working really hard to make our website much more user-friendly and much more accessible for information to the public. And so we would really like to achieve having a great presence on there for all the projects that you're looking at and reviewing. So yeah, I would love to add that as an agenda item, and everybody can kind of think about it, take a look at the page. And what we typically try to do is put up agendas, minutes, and pending files, so that anyone that inquires about a file can go on and has access to all of the supporting documents.
okay.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll talk about a motion to adjourn.
Still feel too new at this. I move to adjourn.
Good one.
Perfect. That was the best motion.
That's motion all day. Now I just need a second.
Motion second.
Awesome. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's anonymous.
Nice to see everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Bye.
Thank you all. And I'll be reading up on everything. Just came back from the Canyons trip. We're dealing with Giardia and out here. So we have like 19 cases. And so I don't know if I'll have Giardia, but I'll do my best.
COVID. So
It has pictures.
I'll share them with the group, but thank you all.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Not of the Giardia.
Yeah, not that part. Not that part.
All right.
All right. Y'all take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.